Hi everybody, my name is Aaron and welcome back to my channel. As most of you know by now, I am running for a seat on Clearwater's City Council. Elections are just over 30 days away on March 15th. I want to take the opportunity in this video to explain to everybody why so many Clearwater voters believe that my opponent, Lina Teixeira, is a Scientologist, and why a vote for Lina Teixeira is a vote for the continued Scientology takeover of our city. The first reason I'll give for why voters believe my opponent is a Scientologist is that Scientology voted Lina onto Clearwater's Downtown Development Board. Without spending too much time talking about how the Downtown Development Board works, in the final analysis, only about 100 people or property owners actually cast votes in this election. And way more than half of those votes are controlled by Scientology and Scientologists. Nobody gets onto the Downtown Development Board without the blessing of, the endorsement of, and the support of Scientology, period. Scientology considers Lina to be so friendly to them and their members and their cause that they wanted her on their board. Now you might say, why would they want her on their board? Why wouldn't they just get one of their own official members on that board instead of Lina? And the answer is because this is how Scientology operates. This is how Scientology tries to create the appearance that they haven't just completely stacked the entire deck in their favor. They use non-members like Lina, who are sympathetic to their cause, or at the very least, terrified of offending them, to front for them, to give the appearance that they actually have support from the non-Scientology community. And people like Lina is how Scientology is able to peddle influence in circles that otherwise would be unfriendly to Scientology itself. Okay, the next reason why people think Lina Teixeira is a Scientologist. Lina was the president of Clearwater's Downtown Merchants Association. This is a private, nonprofit organization composed of some downtown Clearwater business owners. The organization is supposed to promote the interests of downtown Clearwater business. This organization receives a massive amount of grants of tax money to accomplish this purpose. About 2 years ago, when Lina stepped down as the president of this organization, she turned control of this organization over to a notorious Scientology operative and OT8, Carolyn Bradham. Regular viewers of this channel might recognize Carolyn Bradham's name from a video I uploaded in February 2019 called Scientology Files Criminal Complaint Against Me. I'll post a link to that video up above. Carolyn Bradham is literally an agent of Scientology, taking orders directly from David Miscavige and Scientology's Office of Special Affairs. And Lina supported Carolyn, stepping into the role as co-president of Clearwater's Downtown Merchants Association. I can't think of a better way to destroy business in downtown Clearwater than to put a Scientologist in charge of it. Why would Lina do this? Well, that's what voters wonder about. Okay, here's a third reason why people think Lina is a Scientologist. Lina now runs yet another one of these private, downtown-based nonprofit organizations. This one is called the Clearwater Downtown Partnership. One of Scientology's Sea Org members, who literally takes orders directly from David Miscavige, sits on the board of directors of Lina's organization. The Sea Org member, who works for David Miscavige and is on the board of directors of Lina's organization, her name is Lisa Mansell. Lisa Mansell is not just a Scientologist, she's not just a Sea Org member. She's in fact a staff member of Scientology's Office of Special Affairs, or OSA as it's known. OSA is the division that exists within the corporate structure of Scientology itself that deals in legal, harassment, dirty tricks, spying, fair game, etc. OSA is the organization that, many decades ago, tried to frame then Clearwater Mayor Gabe Cesaris with having done a hit-and-run accident. I mean, I cannot stress this enough. Lisa is an official representative of Scientology and David Miscavige. And she's on the board of directors of this organization that Lina Teixeira runs. And by the way, she's not the only one. There are many other Scientologists who sit on the board of directors of Lina's organization. People wonder, why does Lina Teixeira seem to want to control so much of what goes on in Clearwater? Lina tries to join and has succeeded in joining almost every partnership, association, committee, or board that exists. I mean, even right in her campaign literature, she promotes how many of these various organizations she's a part of, and it's extensive. I mean, it's at least 11. And people wonder, why does Lina want to have so much control over what happens in Clearwater? And then they see things like this, and they see how many connections she has to Scientology, to the Office of Special Affairs, to David Miscavige, and they get rightly concerned and suspicious. And it is very concerning, because this is how Scientology has been able to forward its agenda and make progress in its takeover of Clearwater over the last 45 years. They use people like Lina Teixeira. Okay, fourth reason people think Lina is a Scientologist, and honestly, this is probably the most obvious one. Just look at how many Scientologists are publicly supporting Lina's campaign for city council. I'll give you a few examples. Penny Atwell-Jones is an example. Penny is a longtime Scientologist and operative of Scientology. I differentiate between someone who just happens to be a Scientologist and someone who's actually a Scientology operative. Penny is one of the people Scientology uses to infiltrate conservative and Republican groups. Penny has been actively and publicly supporting Lina's campaign. Another example is Bonnie DiMartino. Bonnie DiMartino is another long-term Scientologist and Scientology operative. Bonnie used to actually be the executive director of one of the major so-called churches of Scientology. And she has recently popped up in Clearwater to publicly support Lina's campaign. Yet another example is Pat Donella DiMartino, no relation to Bonnie. But Pat is also a longtime Scientologist and Scientology operative, and Pat has a long history of working for Scientology's Office of Special Affairs. And Pat has been publicly and actively supporting Lina's campaign. Another example would be Eve Martin, another longtime Scientologist and Scientology operative. Not only that, Eve Martin is actually one of the Scientologists who ratted me out to Scientology for not having disconnected from my own mother when Scientology told me I was no longer allowed to see or speak with her ever again. When Eve found out that I was actually still in touch with my mother, he turned me into Scientology. This is the guy, this is one of the guys who's actively, publicly supporting Lina's campaign. Everyone knows that Scientologists are not allowed to support and never would support anyone that Scientology perceives as being against the best interests of Scientology. You cannot blame voters for looking at all of this and concluding, well, it sure looks like Lina is Scientology's Trojan horse. And there's this other thing, this sort of interesting thing that I've observed on the campaign trail. So as I knock on doors in neighborhoods all over Clearwater, and I'm meeting likely voters, every now and then someone will come to the door and say, you know, Lina already came to my door, and I asked her about the Scientology thing, and she said she had, you know, a lot of strong plans to do something about that. In other words, Lina was talking as if she was prepared to be tough on Scientology. And in the instances when someone has mentioned this to me, I go, you know, isn't it interesting that in private, one-on-one, Lina will talk a strong game on Scientology, but not in public? Why is that? The answer is that Lina cannot afford to upset all of her Scientology friends and all of her Scientology supporters. But she knows that being viewed as being weak on Scientology is suicide for a campaign in Clearwater. So in private, she'll talk a very strong game on Scientology because that's what she can get away with. She can get away with speaking like that in private without upsetting all of the Scientologists who she works with and who are on the boards of her organization and who are supporting her campaign. And this brings me to a very important point, something that I very much believe. Anyone who is afraid of upsetting Scientology or Scientologists is unfit to hold public office in Clearwater. My opponent keeps trying to smear my name and my character in the community. And what Lina doesn't understand, as long as you are in bed with Scientology, it does not matter whether you have the character, you could have the character of Mother Teresa. It does not matter how pure and virtuous you believe yourself to be. If you're in bed with Scientology, You are incapable of representing the best interests of the people of Clearwater. You are unfit to hold public office. Scientology's motives and goals are directly counter to those of our city and our citizens, and you cannot serve two masters. This is why a vote for Lina Teixeira is a vote for Scientology and David Miscavige. Our citizens deserve to understand how Scientology peddles its influence in Clearwater, and they do it through people like Lina Teixeira. Mail-in ballots have already arrived in voters' mailboxes. If you want a council member who will stand up to Scientology, who will fight back against Scientology's takeover of our city, and who will represent the interests of neighborhoods over developers, vote Aaron Smith-Levin for City Council seat number 5. If you want a council member who will allow Scientology to continue its takeover of Clearwater, and whose campaign is funded by developers and their attorneys and their lobbyists, then vote for Lina Teixeira. On March 15th, we will find out which way Clearwater is heading. That's all I've got for now. Thank you to all of you who watch until the end of my videos, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe